Oh, so shiny. A good cover can make or break a comic book. When you go into a comic book shop or on newsstands back in the day, and you see all those different titles lined up, what's going to make you pick up Comic A versus Comic B? In the 1960s, DC editor Carmine Infantino devised a list of things that he believed would increase comic book sales, if shown on the cover. And these included things like a direct question to the reader, the hero crying, a purple background, and perhaps most bizarrely, gorillas. Just gorillas. No, seriously, go and look at a bunch of Silver Age DC comics and see just how many of them have gorillas on the cover. But as both the comic book industry and printing technology evolved, there came all new ways of making a comic book leap off store shelves and into the grubby little mitts of collectors. So it's really no surprise that when comics reached their zenith of collectability in the 1990s, we saw all sorts of crazy, chromed out, holographic, lenticular, die-cut, foil embossed, pop-up 3D, thermoreactive, scratch and sniff, printed with the ashes of dead writers, and even comics with a bullet hole shot right through them. In the decade since the 90s, gimmick covers have gained a reputation for being kinda chintzy or trashy. But guess what? Superheroes are trashy. Comic books are trashy. They are literal trash that we wrap in plastic and stack neatly in boxes and keep in our homes for some reason. It's a sickness. So look, take the stick out of your butt, pretend you're 9 years old again, and remember a time when glow-in-the-dark anything was the coolest shit you'd ever seen. Hey heroes, I'm Josh from Panels to Pixels, and this is the weird world of comic book gimmick covers. I suppose it's only right that we start at the very beginning, and although it's kind of hard to nail down the very first gimmick cover, a very early example I found is 1949's Christmas Comics issue 4, published by Fawcett, which features red felt on the title logo and on Santa's jacket. Yes, 1949, and here we were thinking that gimmick covers were a purely 90s phenomenon. In truth, it's really in the mid to late 80s, during the transition from the Bronze to the modern age, that we start to see gimmick covers as we now know them. And interestingly, given that those kind of foil, hologram, die-cut and other novelty devices are associated with mainstream collectability and the notion of comics selling out, you might be surprised to learn that a lot of these ideas originated in independent comics, way before making their way to Marvel, DC, and the company that was really born out of the gimmick age, Image Comics. For example, the first ever hologram cover landed in 1986, with Boffo Laughs issue 1 published by Paragraphics. So produced by this beyond obscure indie publisher, Paragraphics, this comedy mag touts its historic first holocomic status right there on the cover. But for me, when I think of hologram covers, there are a few that come to mind. The 30th anniversary covers that ran across all of the Spider-Man titles in 1992, which look awesome, and then the 6 covers that make up the Fatal Attraction storyline across all of the X-books in 1993, which look less awesome. They're essentially just holographic trading cards stuck on the front cover. It's kind of poorly implemented and kind of goofy looking. Incidentally, Marvel Age, which was Marvel's preview magazine in the 80s and 90s, they ran a great article about the making of the Spider-Man hologram covers in issue 114. Like, I had no idea when I was a kid that they were made by photographing real sculpted models with a laser light. Did you know that? My mind was blown reading this. I recommend seeking it out because it's fascinating if you're into this kind of behind-the-scenes stuff. But back to the gimmick covers, and in 1987 we saw the next big craze once again debuting on an indie title. Rio is a Western graphic novel created by Doug Wildey, who is better known as the co-creator of Johnny Quest. And this comic features, pertinent to this video, the first ever foil-enhanced logo. And again, considering how gaudy and overdone foil covers would become in the ensuing decades, here on Rio, it's classy, it's elegant, you know, it's got that certain, how do you say, je ne sais quoi. So foil covers were huge in the 90s, and it's hard to pick out just one example, but I personally really like, and you'll know this if you've seen some of my other Image Comics videos, I really like the Jim Valentino's Shadowhawk series from Image Comics. The whole deal with Shadowhawk is that he wears this totally impractical mirror chrome suit, which is glam and blingy and just everything I love about 90s comics, and these gimmick covers totally pass the vibe check. I mean, oh, look at that. In fact, Shadowhawk Volume 2, Issue 1, is also a great example of a die-cut cover, so we might as well talk about those. A die-cut cover is exactly what it says on the tin, really. It's a cover with an intricate shape that has been cut or stamped out using a die. And these were also popular in the 90s, although they weren't always very well implemented. This Shadowhawk one is cool, but the very first die-cut cover originated in, you guessed it, an 80s indie comic. The Tick issue 2, published in 1988 by New England Comics Press, featured a blazing inferno on the cover with a square punched out to reveal the Tick on page 1. This one, although pioneering die-cut covers, doesn't really work for me. It's a bit random and poorly executed in my opinion, but it opened the door for some really interesting uses of die-cut. For example, Wolverine issue 50 from 1992, which is designed to look like a manila folder that has been slashed at by the claws of the cantankerous Canuck, revealing a look at the comic's interior. I love this one because the whole folder thing works great as a concept. It's got a really good, eye-catching design, and the sneak peek of the fantastic Mark Silvestri artwork inside just makes you want to pick up this book and open it even more. Anyway, we talked about foil a moment ago, but what's even better than a foil cover? Well, a foil embossed cover, of course, and that's exactly what we got in 1991 with Silver Surfer issue 50. Take that shiny, shiny foil and make it jump off the page even more. But foil soon gave way to Chromium, which is kind of hard to describe, but think of it as the love child of foil and holograms. One of the most iconic examples of a Chromium cover is also the very first example, in Valiant Comics Bloodshot issue 1 from 1993. And for my money, this is just such an iconic cover. Chromium printing basically allows for any printed artwork to become shiny and reflective, rather than just adhering some metallic foil over the top of the artwork. And the colours on Bloodshot issue 1 just pop right off the cover. I could look at this thing all day. And speaking of things I could look at all day, I love anything glow in the dark. Whether it's toys, those little stars that we all had on our bedroom ceilings as kids, and even comics. It's one of my favourite gimmicks, but it's surprisingly underutilised. I don't know if that's because it's more expensive or harder to produce, or maybe it just requires more creative finesse to implement rather than just slapping some foil on a cover and making magpies like me buy it just because it's shiny. And I will buy it because it's shiny. And the first ever glow-in-the-dark cover is also the best one, 1991's Ghost Rider issue 15. And I kind of can't believe that it took until 1991 to get a glow-in-the-dark comic, considering that phosphorus ink had been around for what, decades at that point? You saw it all the time in the 70s. Well, I didn't see it all the time in the 70s, I wasn't alive, I look good for my age, but not that good. But I guess the real question is, how well does this 32-year-old comic still glow? Let's find out together now through the magic of video editing. Okay, I don't know if you're able to see that or not. It does still glow. To be fair, it spends most of its time in a long box, but it still looks good. It's a fantastic glow-in-the-dark cover. So evidently I like to buy a lot of comics, and my favourite place to buy comics is Whatnot. Whatnot is a fantastic app where you can shop for collectibles through live streams. And they've been helping me fill some gaps in my 90s comics collection by sponsoring my videos. I always like to show off some recent pickups that I'm excited about in my videos. Previously, I picked up my first ever slabbed comic in New Mutants issue 87, the first appearance of Cable. This was X-Men issue 4 from 1992. This is the first appearance of Omega Red, iconic 90s X-Men villain. And then, speaking of chromey covers, Spider-Man 29 issue 1. This is 1992 as well, I think. Picked this up in a mystery box, so I was really stoked to get this. It was a double surprise. But I'm not done yet. I'm picking up comics on Whatnot all the time, and you can too by using my link on screen now or in the description of this video. And just by signing up, you'll get a free £10 credit to spend on comics. I've said it before and I'll say it again, that is free comics, baby. It's a fantastic deal, so join me on Whatnot. So we've talked about the rise of foil, die-cut, chromium, and glow-in-the-dark in the early 1990s, and it was around this time that a bunch of Marvel's most popular artists packed up their pencils and went off to form a brand new independent company, Image Comics. Now, I've talked about the formation of Image in loads of detail in a few of my other videos, so I'll spare you the details here, but needless to say, the publisher immediately developed a reputation for being all style and maybe only partially substance. And look, I say that as a massive 90s Image fan. I'll take style over substance any day. I mean, have you seen my videos? Anyway, although the first few Image titles out of the gate showed impressive restraint, to be honest, when it came to not just flooding the market with variants and gimmicks galore, that soon changed once they established themselves as the third biggest publisher behind Marvel and DC. I've heard Image founder Rob Liefeld on his podcast talking about how the printing companies would rock up to Image with samples of all the new different paper types and printing techniques. Like, we can do this, we can do that, we can print on toilet paper probably. And so it's presumably from one of these meetings that Jim Lee's creator-owned Wildcat covert action teams got one of the very first gimmick covers at Image in the form of Wildcats issue 2 in 1992. This prismatic cover still looks great all these years later, in my opinion. It's a really good design, if a bit tacky, but again, tacky can be fun, These are comic books, don't take them so seriously. Oh, so shiny. Liefeld himself soon got in on the action with his Bloodstrike issue 1 in 1993, which featured a rub the blood gimmick. Basically, these streaks of blood were printed in thermal reactive ink, and when you rubbed them, creating friction and therefore heat, the blood disappeared. I'm not going to show you on my copy because it is super minty, and Rob Liefeld just announced a Bloodstrike movie, so there is a 0.005% chance it will actually come out, be a huge success, and this totally worthless 90s comic will skyrocket in value. Maybe not. Comics collecting, it's a sickness. So I think I've covered most of my favourite cover gimmicks so far. There's tons I haven't talked about though, like lenticulars, polybags. These action figure variants have become really popular in recent years. And you know, variant covers in general could be considered a gimmick, and variants are like the backbone of comics collecting in the year of our Lord 2024. But I want to get into some of the really weird stuff, the downright ridiculous. Like 1993's Jab issue 3, where each copy was individually shot with a real bullet. You know it from the thumbnail. From 90s micro-publisher Adhesive Comics, this was really a meta-commentary on the rise of the gimmick cover, and on comics collectability in general. You know, you see on the cover there's actually a comics collector bemoaning the fact that the comic is no longer in mint condition. And what was really clever about this one is that the bullet hole was actually incorporated into the various stories in this anthology issue, with characters reacting or tires being blown out by the bullet. And according to this mail order form, collectors could pay extra to have the comic shot with different caliber rounds, from the standard .22 cal to the upgraded 9mm, all the way up to shotgun, with only 20 of each caliber shot. Each issue came signed, numbered, and packaged with the shell casing of the exact bullet that was used. And I especially like the note here that the shotgun edition is guaranteed to be unreadable. But for the more discerning collector, with well-lined pockets, much more well-lined than mine, Marvel's got you covered with 1996's X-Men Onslaught issue 1, which received a 22 karat gold embossed variant, limited to 2,000 numbered copies. And where better to display that than next to your copy of Lady Death Heartbreaker issue 1, which was published by Coffin Comics in 2002, the Steam Queen variant edition of which was enhanced with genuine Swarovski crystals and was limited to only 99 copies. That one's a real gem. But look, who says a comic book cover needs to be printed on paper anyway? Certainly not 90s indie publisher London Night Studios, who produce a number of variant covers across their Razor title that were printed on velvet, including Razor's crossover with James O'Barr's cult character The Crow, which got the lush red velvet treatment. Fuzzy. In 2006, Avatar Press, who are known for publishing horror and adult-oriented comics, produced a leather foil variant of a Nightmare on Elm Street fear book, which was limited to 900 copies. And then in 2017, Aftershock Comics leveled up the leatherwork with this really creepy variant of Baby Teeth issue 1, with hand-painted art by David Angelo Roman on real goatskin, and limited to only 25 hand-numbered copies. So then also in 2017, and not to be outdone, Valiant Comics took up tools and turned to resistant materials, with a string of gimmick covers that are each more bonkers than the last. Kicking things off with Exo Manowar issue 1, which received a 1 in 500 variant by Monica Palos with a brushed metal cover. The following year brought 2 glass covers from Valiant, with Livewire issue 1's 1 in 250 variant by Doug Braithwaite, the first comic cover to be made of glass with UV ink that glows under a black light, and then Bloodshot Rising Spirits issue 1, which got a 1 in 250 variant by Ken Lashley with a tempered glass cover. How badass is this? 2019's Bloodshot issue 1 also got a 1 in 250 variant, this one by John Boy Myers featuring a carbon fiber cover. Again, how badass is that? And more recently, 2022's Archer and Armstrong Forever issue 1 received a 1 in 250 variant by Marcio Fiorito with a very attractive burnt wood cover. Oh, I bet that smells amazing. Burnt wood, oof, lovely. If that doesn't secure Valiant as the reigning king of gimmick covers, well, we'll finish on something that surely will. I present to you the self-proclaimed most variant cover of all time, Quantum and Woody issue 1, published by Valiant in 2017, with a 1 in 250 variant by Clayton Henry featuring Deep Breath Time, Chromium, Lenticular, Embossed, die-cut, foil, iridescent ink, an extra hero sticker, and each one came hand-numbered. God blimey. So hey, that's my thesis on gimmick covers. It turns out that they're cool and fun and good actually. So thanks for watching this video. You'll be glad to know that the gimmick cover is alive and well in 2024. I noticed just last month that DC put out a rub and smell peppermint scented variant of the Batman and Santa Silent Night issue 1. And I honestly get so psyched seeing publishers doing stuff like this, because I don't believe that gimmicks killed the comic book industry, I just think they're fun. If you want to see more videos like this one, don't forget to subscribe to Panels to Pixels, and give that bell icon a little ring-a-ding-ding so you never miss out on future uploads. Come and buy some comics with me on Whatnot by using my link. Stay safe out there, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye bye!